Obsessive compulsive disorder is commonly diminished to being overly clean or particularly organized. How many times have you described yourself as a little bit OCD when being kind of particular about how something sits on a shelf? Or making fun of a friend for being kind of OCD for washing their hands a little bit too much, which, let's be honest, that should be the norm right now. Yes, hypercleanliness is an aspect of OCD, but OCD can actually manifest in so many different ways that have nothing to do with cleanliness. OCD has 5 main categories of manifestations: obsessive doubts, obsessive thinking, obsessive impulses, obsessive fears, and obsessive images. And you try saying obsessive that many times over and over and not stumbling over all of the S's. Common compulsions that may occur from these categories include, but are not limited to, cleaning, checking, counting, arranging, touching objects, hoarding, seeking reassurance, and making lists. You may hear these actions and think, I do that all the time. Do I have OCD? Probably not. It's the same idea of being very sad but not actually being clinically depressed. You can experience aspects of OCD, such as checking things over and over, but not actually have OCD. The DSM-5 concludes that to be diagnosed with OCD, there must be the presence of time-consuming obsessions and compulsions that cause significant distress, and they need to add up to at least an hour of time being spent on these obsessions and compulsions. They interfere with or reduce the quality of an individual's social, academic, and occupational functioning, and that are not better explained by another mental disorder or substance use. So, for example, Tourette syndrome commonly involves having tics and recreating certain things over and over again, which is also present in OCD. OCD usually presents itself in early childhood around the age of 10 or early adulthood in your early 20s. And it can also be brought on or exacerbated by a traumatic experience, such as losing a loved one. There are many important and interesting factors that go into being diagnosed with OCD, but the question that I want to answer today is, why does most of society think that OCD has to do with being particularly clean all the time? My hypothesis is that it is what the media has fed us over and over again, and it's what we as viewers have silently accepted. And I used to also accept this idea of OCD until I listened to Invisibilia, a podcast put on by NPR. The first episode, The Secret History of Thought, focuses on how therapy techniques have progressed over the years, from Freudian psychoanalysis to cognitive behavioral therapy and everything in between. In the episode, they focus on a man called S, who began having obsessive, violent thoughts after watching the film City of God, which is a movie about the drug cartel in South America and includes a lot of violence. It became so bad that it was affecting his daily life and he was thinking about committing suicide, so he decided to seek professional help. And his therapist, Tom Corboy, was finally able to diagnose him.
See, according to Corboy, S has a subset of obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD with harming obsessions.
Harm OCD.
Obsessive compulsive disorder is a thinking problem. You focus obsessively on the things that most disgust you. If you hate germs, you think continuously about germs, how they're crawling all over you. If you fear fire, you think about burning down your own house day and night.
It's really just a question of what they're afraid of.
So really, the real problem with S, and many of the people like him, and there are plenty of them, isn't that they are less moral than the rest of us. Corboy says their problem actually is that they're more moral.
Their sense of moral identity is a strong part of it.
See, when most of us have these thoughts, we are unfazed by them.
The average person just goes, silly thought, and gets on with their day. But a person with OCD has these thoughts and they become extremely distressed.
It disgusts them that these thoughts are even in their brain.
What if I hurt someone or kill someone?
I had never heard of OCD manifesting in such a way, and it sent me down this rabbit hole of discovery. So today, I'm going to take a few pieces of media ranging from the early 2000s to the semi-present and break down how accurately I feel like they depicted OCD and its various manifestations.
Okay, no need to panic. Deep breaths, everyone.
Here we have a prime example of the OCD trope.
Okay, well, we're just gonna have to spend some time and put the CDs in the right cases.
Should I help you clean up?
No way. You had your party, now I have mine.
Maybe Monica is supposed to have OCD, but the frustrating thing is that this show frames it in a way that she finds joy or pleasure from cleaning, which people can do that.
Oh no. Was I cleaning in my sleep again? Okay,
But OCD, even mild, is disruptive to your everyday life, and we do not see that here. It seems that the idea of OCD is being used as a plot device to make Monica the overbearing friend of the group, instead of giving an accurate portrayal of the disorder.
And 6 others.
Here you are.
31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 37, 38, 39, 40. Doc, I'm feeling great.
Thankfully, this show does quite a better job than Friends. We see Monk's OCD take up a good amount of his time getting ready in the morning. Also, for anyone who doesn't know, Monk is a detective that has taken a leave of absence because his wife was murdered. His wife's death could also explain the intensity of his compulsions at this time. As I discussed earlier, sometimes OCD can be exaggerated by traumatic experiences.
So, going with the flow. Good. Good for you.
It's also good to see he's going to therapy for it. Although his OCD is exaggerated and Hollywoodized throughout the show, seeing similar themes of cleanliness again, I think Monk is a step in the right direction.
Well, how'd that make you feel? I mean, you know, being called in.
Feels great. Feels like old times. Back in the saddle.
The Aviator is a fantastic example of how OCD can progress, especially if agitated by extreme stress and anxiety. Again, this depiction is Hollywoodized to an extent and also focuses on a cleaning compulsion and a fear of contamination at first. However, the bathroom scenes do an excellent job of showing how time-consuming compulsions can be.
Degree. The entire process must be repeated from the beginning.
Come in with the milk.
Repeated.
Come in with the milk.
Later on, as Howard descends into a full mental break, you can see that he develops a sort of counting or repetition compulsion. You see this in his hoarding of a certain amount of milk bottles containing his urine and how he repeats the phrase, "come in with the milk." This is by far the most accurate representation of OCD I found in my research. She's frank about how it's affected her whole life. She has a clear counting compulsion, and from the scenes depicted, there's no cleaning compulsion shown, which has been represented in all of the other examples.
Really a classical presentation.
Well, okay. Then I guess it's classic to have to masturbate 8 or 16 times a night until your legs shake and you're crying and you're trying to make sure that your parents didn't hear you. So you check their door 8 times, then you move your toothbrush 64 times, then you move your dad's toothbrush 64 times, then you go back and forth between the two, moving each one 8 times until you've reached 64 times. But then you realize that that doesn't feel quite right either. And suddenly it's 3 in the morning and you're fucking exhausted and you go to school the next day looking like a zombie. It's classical.
Although the examples in the media I chose had their fair share of accuracy, we need to be aware as viewers that OCD is not just wanting things to be clean. It can affect your whole entire life. Accurate representation makes people feel seen and less alone in their experiences. It can also allow for viewers to put a name to what they're going through. Maybe a person had severe OCD and for reasons they thought that their actions were incurable or something that they just dealt with because they'd never seen it depicted before. Society needs to be real with mental illness and not just use it as a trope for characters to be different. Hopefully you learned something new from this essay, and we can all go and demand better representation for mental illness in the media.